Hi, this is Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that spotlights the stars of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So sit back, relax, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. Well, this Someone You Should Know podcast guest is really interesting because it's all about the story of resiliency. My guest comes from Los Angeles-based artist and marketer, on a mission to help society shift into a healthier and happier collective. And she's a damn fine musician to boot, too. Will you please welcome the lovely Courtney McKenna. Courtney, Happy New Year, hon.
Hi, Happy New Year. It's so excited to be here.
No, I'm so glad to have you on here. As I mentioned earlier, resiliency is this lady's middle name because this lady has bounced back from just about anything she could be thrown at and has come out stronger each time. Courtney, I read that you got let go from 5 different jobs, all of which you loved, and under various circumstances beyond your control. How did you bounce back from all that?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. The intro just made me tear up a little bit, honestly. So, I think that especially the past few years, but it really began before 2020 lockdown. I think, that's just sort of the risk that we take often as artists, is that we have to find something that works for us, that gives us enough freedom and flexibility to be able to pursue this thing that's outside of a career or whatever job it is. I can go into details. We'd probably be here for a while, but all the different jobs I've had and all of that. But I think, and for me, each one ended for different reasons. One time I was a manager of this artist space in Brooklyn, and it was a community art space. And it was so fun. I got to put on shows for fine artists and for dancers and other musicians. And it ended because I rented out the space to an underground music group that brought up speakers to our rooftop that were meant for, underground raves. And they were a little too loud for a Sunday afternoon. So, we had some complaints, and that was really like the thing that broke the cable.
It always seems like there is something. It's usually beyond our control. We try to do. The thing is, you probably did this out of the goodness of your heart, trying to help this individual out, right? And next thing you know, you're getting called out on the carpet and you're giving your pink slip. That happens so often. It's good to see you got the resiliency and bouncing back there. Your bio says that during the course of your life, you've started over a dozen businesses as a creative entrepreneur and are very passionate about helping women and other entrepreneurs to unlock their full potential by empowering them with practical tools and wisdom so they can stand in their own power. There's a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I guess that looks like, a few different things. Where do we want to start, with the entrepreneur part or the empowerment for women?
Yeah, just if you can encapsulate everything there and just give me a couple of minutes of exactly why you did it. For one thing, obviously you found out something that you're good at doing, and you just want to help. Sure. You want to help everybody else do it too. Let's go from that avenue. Okay,
so the entrepreneur thing really has been inbred in me from a young age. I always saw my grandfather having great success in his business, and he was one of my greatest inspirations. So that's the reason why I studied marketing in college. But as soon as I got out of school, I just felt like I could not bear to work in an office. And I've always sang and wrote songs and stuff, and so I moved to New York City and I started playing music, and that was really just what my heart needed, So, long story short, I think that my journey is really just, I want to help others do the same, because I think it's so often that we're programmed to be put in these jobs that we may not necessarily like, but it's what we're told that we should do and we should enjoy when, we should be doing X, Y, or the other thing for whatever reason. So, I think that there's just so much more to life, and I really believe that everyone has a voice. And so for me, whether it's giving voice lessons or actually helping through coaching or even just like helping somebody build their own business through marketing, I feel like all of those things, really, you have to sort of have a foundation and a knowledge of yourself. And so, that comes back to the voice, whether it's actually singing songs or even if it's just getting to know yourself and, working with the energy of self-discovery and self-appreciation.
You and I have a lot of parallels there as far as that goes. I've always tried, my whole philosophy in radio, I am actually retired now as of the date of this show here. I am retired now. And I've spent my last, I guess, maybe 24 years in radio focusing on making the guests the star. Yeah, I'm basically the host, and anyone who happens to be listening to my show, I try to make them the star. And it's just the whole thing as far as that goes. I've had my time in the limelight. It's time for me to take what I've got, my talents and such, to make somebody else feel happy and feel good about themselves. So you and I parallel that really well. And you realize, realize there's life beyond a cube farm, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just think that, anytime that I've been given the opportunity to do something, it's truly been because of my community. And that's every job I've had, every, opportunity to perform with my band. So I think it's important that we continue to pass that forward because we're meant to be in community with people,
right, exactly. Yeah. Pay it forward. Pay it forward. Absolutely. I'm all about that. You've also learned that every time you've gotten kicked down, that you found that music is the soothing balm that basically puts balance back in your world. When did you start with music?
Absolutely. So I started singing when I was about 3. My parents put me in the church choir.
All right.
And at least that's my earliest memory of it. And I just remember thinking, like, this is the greatest thing. I loved just being able to make sounds and express myself in that way.
Right. Being in front of a crowd at an early age, because they say that public speaking is the number one biggest fear. People would rather, be dead in a coffin rather than to talk in front of a crowd. Which I got lucky, and you've got lucky because performing is very, very hard. There's a lot of people who actually are performers. I had an interview just a couple of days ago with an individual who is now up for a whole bunch of honors and such. And he really and truly doesn't like talking to crowds, so it makes it kind of difficult.
I get it. It's honestly harder to give a speech than it is to perform music. And I think that's probably because I'm just more practiced at it. But I just spent some time with Toastmasters, and that actually really helped me.
Oh, good. That's really good. Very, very good.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about your music here. In 2022, you released several songs based on the topics of addiction and mental health. The first single is called CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility. I played this for my wife, and she started pogoing because it has that new wave vibe from the late 70s and 80s. It's got a little bit of surf in there. It's got a little bit of this. It's got a little bit of that. And I'll swear to God, I'm humming it. I've been humming it ever since I played it this morning.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's one of the. What's the background on CSR?
So CSR I wrote during, it was about 2016, and there was a lot of news about this pipeline being built through the Midwest, through the Dakotas. And I don't know if you remember the DAP, it was called No DAP movement. So it was like people protesting this oil pipeline being built because it was scheduled to be built across sacred Native American land.
Right, yes.
And so it just, it really touched me. I don't, as far as I know, have any direct bloodlines to Native Americans, but just the fact that, again, corporations were infringing on something that people hold so sacred, really struck me. And
you just had the empathy for these individuals, and you felt you needed to do something about it, and you did. You came up with a great song here. We're going to feature that right now. It is called CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility, from today's guest, Courtney McKenna, right here on the Someone You Should Know podcast. Great song right there. That is CSR. That's one you're going to be humming all day long. That is called Corporate Social Responsibility from today's guest, Courtney McKenna. Backing her is the Sweet Myths. Is that correct? Is that the name of your band?
Yeah, Sweet Myths. So they just go by Sweet Myths. It took me a minute because I'm always used to giving proper titles. the Sweet Myths. The Sweet
Myths, all right.
That's the writer in me. But yeah, you can find them on Sweet Myths at Instagram or on their website. So we actually met, they've been doing their own thing for 6-7 years now, but we met last September playing a gig in San Diego, and we just hit it off. And then I asked them if they wanted to be part of my outdoor showcase I was putting on at the time. And then they backed me for the show where we played on top of a bus that went around San Diego. And that was, it was history from there. We just started playing together, and they live in San Diego. So, we do a lot of back and forth, but it's not too far. It's about a 2-hour drive, and it's worked out so far.
Very good. So, who are the members, Courtney?
So the core members are Diego Rodriguez. He's their lead singer and rhythm guitar player. He plays drums and backup vocals for me. And then we've got DJ Rich. He's lead guitar, slays. He's so good. And I'd say those are probably the 2 core members. And then we also have on bass Dylan Farrell, and we kind of switched a few bass players, but he's been our go-to guy for my band, for my project this past year for the most part. There's also Nate Bumar, who is an incredible jazz bass player in San Diego, so he plays with us occasionally too.
Very, very good. The band's called the Sweet Myths. It's MYTHS, not MIX. So sweet, because we sometimes kind of blend words together. But Sweet Myths. By the way, I hear that you've got a brand new EP working on this summer. It's Southwest inspired rock. Can you tell us how that's going and what we can expect it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really excited. I went back and forth trying to decide if I wanted to do a full album or just EP. Mm-hmm. And right now it's looking like EP, and I've also started working on the full album, but bit by bit. So right now we've got 2 songs done. It's probably going to be 4 tracks, possibly 5, but essentially we'll have my song Lonely Rider, which hasn't been released yet. That'll be the second single off of that EP. And then we have Satellite, which I have an acoustic version of that song out right now. Mm-hmm. And that's one of everyone's favorite songs to sing along with at the shows and stuff. So I'm really excited for that one. And a few more surprises on there. So
I've always been told you have all your life to make your first album and only 4 months to make your second. So make the first one good.
That's great advice.
Next, I want to talk to you about something that really perked my ears. I saw this in your bio. And it says, Courtney is a new member of the Recording Academy and has been studying music theory for 2 years now with her mentor, Chris Kapika. And the reason why that strikes such an unusual chord with me, Kapika is my given surname. So I want to find out a little bit more about Chris and find out how our genealogy lines cross, if at some point maybe he might be a long-lost cousin of mine. I don't know. So, tell me about working with Chris.
Chris is awesome. He's just so intelligent. I think we met through a mutual friend of mine from New York. I lived there for a while before I moved out here a few years ago. And he's just helped me so much with everything from ear training to really understanding theory. Pretty much up until this point, I've been self-taught for music and writing. And so he's just helped me sort of understand, more options when it comes to writing songs and and really owning it in as a craft. He's taught ear training at Juilliard, and he went to school there, and he's just brilliant musician.
Well, you say brilliant, so that's definitely Kapika trait.
Yeah.
I'm just joking.
Runs in the family.
Just joking. But I'm really looking forward to actually meeting him in the future. Yeah. That's for sure. We're going to feature another song from Courtney. It's called Save Me. Let's talk about the background of this and also talk about the Save Yourself fundraiser that we're going to include in the show notes. So talk to me about Save Me before we play it.
So the song, it's actually called Save Yourself. You had it right with the fundraiser.
I had it. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why did I write Save Me?
No worries. Yeah, I actually, I'm very particular about that. So it's kind of funny that I think, there's so many songs out there that are sort of from this perspective of like, I'm the victim and save yourself. But a huge theme of my life has been saving myself. Well, so I grew up with my dad, who was an alcoholic, and Save Yourself was really a plea that I wrote to him to stop drinking. Right. And it was at the point where I sort of knew everything had kind of hit a breaking point, and I could see it going downhill pretty quickly. So, for my own sanity, I stopped drinking around the time, like 2 years before I wrote the song, actually. And I was trying to just be a role model for him.
All right, very good. Very good.
And yeah, so
what's the story on the fundraiser?
The fundraiser is for athletes against anxiety and depression. And so I was connected with this group early last year when I started just talking about my song a little bit more. And my dad was actually a professional football player for a very short period of time before he hurt his back. He always talked about his glory days and all of that. And I think that it just felt really aligned, to help this organization in honor of my dad who passed last year in 2 years ago now in 2021.
Our
Because
condolences on the loss there, hon. Our sincere condolences. It's hard. It's very hard. Very, very hard.
Yeah. And I just feel like, if he had maybe some better support, especially in those early years, to transition from, the over the top personality, like he loved being a football player. That was his whole identity. And so when he couldn't play anymore, I think that had a lot that weighed on him, and among other things, but I really love that organization because they don't just help athletes, but they provide free therapy for people, a lot of like college students and stuff. And I just think that that's so important.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now we're going to go ahead and include the information on that in our show notes. So I want everyone to check this out. Okay. Plus we're going to have a lot of other information in the show notes. So be sure you check that out and support the Save Yourself fundraiser. And here's the song Save Yourself from the very talented Courtney McKenna on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
Did you not look both ways? Did you not tie your laces straight? Time to Velcro up. Use a microphone. Every time it's still the same. Can't find the drugs, complain. Need a lifeline. I need a lifeline. Gotta save yourself. You gotta save yourself. I'm not the only one who feels you going down. Gotta save yourself. You gotta save yourself.
That is Save Yourself from today's guest, Courtney McKenna. And Courtney, being an independent artist is not the easiest thing in the world. And that's why independent artists should focus on community building. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So this is really a page I took from my grandpa. I know I mentioned to him early on that he was in the car industry, and you might be like, well, what does that have to do with music and independent artists? But, I think I just really saw his business thriving because he really supported the community in so many different ways. And it's really relevant, especially now, everyone wants to blow up on TikTok, but even TikTok is a community-based, engagement platform. So, whether it's through social media or like planning a series of actual in-person events, I think at the end of the day, it's the human connection and supporting each other is what the game is about.
Right.
And yeah.
I was always told that a rising tide floats all boats, so that is the thing.
Absolutely.
You've got to work together as a team. Now, our show is here in Northwest Indiana, right outside of Chicago, and the Northwest Indiana music scene, it seems like everybody helps everybody else out, and I'm sure it's that way also in L.A. too. I remember seeing that also in St. Louis when I was there for 22 years, but it's so cool. The scenes all work together. My daughter is part of the St. Louis music scene with her band called Sisser, and it seems like they are always working gigs with their friends, and it's when one person succeeds, they all succeed as a team, and that's what it should be all about. And I really highly applaud you on that. If someone is contemplating hearing this interview and contemplating, I really and truly want to go in the music business. I got myself a brand new guitar for Christmas, and I want to make the big leap. What would you tell an individual who is thinking about making that first step? What advice would you give them? Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm like, hold on to your seatbelts, people. No. Honestly, just be patient, because I think that if you really want it, things start to open up. But there's no right way. It's just, you have to keep going, and you have to give yourself some grace sometimes. Good. Don't compare to other people.
Right.
Just
run your own race. Yeah, run your own race. That's one of the biggest things right there. Absolutely. One of the ways we can help out these individuals, these media entrepreneurs who are doing things on their own, is through the help of a Patreon site. And I see you've got one. If members subscribe to your Patreon site, what kind of additional bonuses will they get?
I do, yay. So my Patreon, initially, I was doing weekly updates of behind-the-scenes action, and I've sort of switched focuses this year because I'm launching, actually, a local community interview and performance series online.
So you got a podcast, right?
Yeah. It's we're gonna film the first episodes this month, so I'm really excited for that.
How cool is that? Yay! All right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It's gonna be a little bit interview, and then our live performance at the end will be me and my guest playing something, and we'll release that song as a single after the episode.
All right, so we are definitely going to include that in the show notes, along with her Patreon site, because I want everyone to give this lovely lady to start out 2023. What the heck? Everyone chip in $20, okay? So let's help out, help her out, okay?
Thank you.
Well, yeah, and the podcast is. Do you have a name for it yet?
So the podcast will be called the Indie Artist Survival Showcase.
I love it. Love it. Oh, well, what we need to do is we need to reconnect and get some of those other guests of yours on my podcast so we can help grow it all. So that's what this whole thing's about, is would be awesome. Is people working together. I mean, I'm not making $1 out of this particular podcast, but I'll tell you one thing, just the enjoyment of talking with individuals like you and great music like you've been giving us. That is just, I'm just, it really excited about this whole thing. Your final thoughts, Courtney, before we close up shop here. Give us the website information. We'll include everything in the show notes, like I said, but give us your website information and final thoughts.
Sure. You can find my website at CourtneyMcKenna.rocks, ROCKS. And final thoughts, don't be afraid to use your voice. Like, whether it's, in the shower or in the car, it doesn't matter, like, how great of a singer you are. You have a voice, and that is so powerful. And we're so ashamed of our voices, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. I totally agree. That's why we're doing this and not shooting video today, because I would rather you hear my voice rather than see my ugly mug.
Well, you've got a great voice.
Thanks, darling.
So.
The final song we're going to feature is one that I just really fell in love with. It's called Galaxies Collide. Can you give us the background on this particular song?
Sure. So I'm now reflecting back after therapy and journaling and all the songwriting and everything that's helped me come to the place that I'm at today. When I initially wrote this song, I was still in love with the idea of this relationship with a person that was in my life a few years back. And so it's really about exploring codependency. Mm-hmm. and that comes through in all relationships in one form or another. But I think it felt very explosive and unexplainable, the connection that we had. But then I think a lot of it was also in my own head. So,
awesome. Very good.
The song I'm really proud of that song, and the video is very, very cool. So
we'll include matter of fact, we're going to include the video also in the show notes too. Courtney, thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast here as we kick off 2023. There's a lot of great inspiration you provided. You've got some great music there. So when the EP comes out or the album comes out, we'll have to have you back on the show, because I want everyone to buy a couple hundred copies each. Okay, so that's the way.
Oh, thank you so much.
So I wish you the very best for 2023, and thanks for being a guest on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun talking with you.
Closer, closer. We're moving in closer, watching the lights in the sky cross that river, letting our fears all subside, drown our worries, take our lives stride by stride, find our reasons, making the time for what's right. Now I'm closer, no more searching in the dark as the time fades. My heart
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.